Welcome back to part 2 of this How to Play series for the 7th Citadel. We're not messing around with any fancy introductions this time, we're diving straight into the action. Casket is going to kick things off by attempting the examine action near the top of the card. Though cautiously, because when you're a tiny plastic figurine under a hot sun, magnifying glasses are not your friend. Also, I don't think you're really supposed to move the minis around the card they're on, but don't blame me, Casket has a mind of his own. And a goofy walk apparently. The action we looked at earlier had both a white box for success and a black box for failure, whereas this action has only a white box, telling us to draw card 073. If you fail an action like this one with no black box, then there's no further consequence, other than the wasted effort and bruised pride. You can usually try again if you want. Later on, we'll let Casket and Brookhaven team up for an action, but this time Casket is going to tackle it on his own. The cost is 3 or more action cards, and the difficulty is 2. I think I'll draw the bare minimum this time. Okay, that's 2 stars altogether, and the action succeeds. Hooray! By the way, these other icons in the result area are called class icons. These include the fist, cape, flag and cinnabon. There's also a question mark which can be used in place of any of the other class icons, so it's a sort of wild card. Class icons don't do anything on their own, but as we'll see shortly, there are lots of in-game effects which can make them useful. For example, here's an effect which lets me convert 1 flag into 1 success. I'll discard the action cards and we get to reveal card 73, which is, oh, a shovel. And also, in a shocking twist which nobody could have foreseen, more icons. Casket calls out, "Hey Brook, I found us a shovel. We should be able to dig our way out of any situation now. I think we've practically won the game." Brook just rolls her eyeballs. In the top left corner is the purse icon. Purse cards represent not only stuff you can carry around with you, like weapons, armour, clothing, items and gear, but also things which follow you around, like a companion. So yeah, don't take the purse metaphor too literally. I'll keep Casket's purse card below his character card, inside this deluxified dotted line, which I hand-made from recycled hyphens. The shovel is pretty heavy, so there's also a weight icon indicating that it weighs 1 pound, or ton, or light year, or whatever the hell unit of weight they use in the collapsing lands. And Casket's character card tells me that in a 2-player game, he can carry up to 7 furlongs of purse cards before he starts to resemble that hoarder lady from Labyrinth. The shovel card's effect is inside this rectangle, with a couple of condition icons at the top. If a condition icon matches the action you're trying to perform, then you're allowed to use the effect inside the frame. So the shovel can be used to help with an open-close action or a dig action, but nothing else. And if a condition icon is empty, like this, then you can use it with any action. We'll take a look at the shovel's effect and keywords later on. But for now, Casket's turn is over, and Brook finally gets her first turn. She decides to forge a path into the unknown by tackling the exploration card to the east. It has a Pathfind action which will let us flip the card. Note that you don't move figures onto exploration cards, no matter how enticing those fluffy white clouds look. These arrows around the edge of the card mean that it's attached to adjacent cards, and you can perform the action from there. But I like to move her closer to the edge which she's exploring. At this point, Casket could be involved in the action if both players agree, but this time Blue will act alone. The Pathfind action has a cost of 1, and in this case I can draw 1 card and discard it without even bothering to look at it, because the action's difficulty is 0. And now I get to flip the exploration card. Oh look, crossover humour. Let's try that again. That's better. Okay, the card reads, "You encounter a fellow traveller who starts ranting that nothing is real and that we're all just playthings in some game. Despite your best efforts, you get drawn into a pointless philosophical debate." Notice that the hourglass icon in the top left corner tells us that this is a temporary event, which is pretty common on exploration cards. Temporary events get resolved right away and then usually discarded. That speech bubble icon in a white box is a talk action, and it's surrounded by a spiky red frame, which makes it look like it was just tasered. That means it's a mandatory action, so it must be attempted immediately. If she had the Scholar card, the cost and difficulty would both be lower, but sadly she has no skill cards at all yet. Okay, let's do this. I'll draw the minimum, which is 3 cards, and I'll draw one more for good measure. Awesome, that's 3 successes, which means that the action itself is a success. In the white consequence box, we get some flavor text and a new icon which we haven't seen before. This lets me choose one of the action cards I just drew and add it to my hand of skill cards. So I'll discard the ones I don't want, but I'll keep the lockpicking lawyer skill, because Brooke is shadier than she appears. The condition is shown at the top, and below that we have 2 separate effects. Firstly, it can add 1 star to the result, and secondly, it converts class icons of a cloaked figure into stars. When a card lists several effects like this, you're free to use all of them, or as many as you want. By the way, you'll notice that I've been a bit stingy and only given Brooke 3 slots for her skill cards. But don't blame me, that's the hand size limit in a 2-player game. Back on the exploration card, I'll just point out that if we'd failed the action, then this little paint splatter icon means that we would have lost 2 life points. Also, there's an icon in the top right corner reminding you that all these cards used to be made out of grey cardboard until they put ink on them at the factory, and now they're green. What they should have put there was some sort of reminder that after resolving the grey exploration card, we can replace it with the appropriate adventure card. So the exploration card gets discarded. Oh look, it's the banner thing at the top of the screen. I guess this is going to be important. In 7th Citadel, discarding a card depends on the card's colour. If it has a blue back, then it goes on the discard pile to the right of your character card. All the other cards go behind the past divider in the card tray. So that's where this exploration card goes. It's out of the game for now, but as we'll see later, it may possibly return. Now we can replace it with the terrain card which belongs there, Adventure Card 94. We also put new exploration cards to the east and the south. And that's the end of Brooke's turn. At last, our heroes have an exciting new expanse of cardboard to explore. Either character can move on to the new card, but Casket is still mucking about with his shovel, trying unsuccessfully to fit it inside his purse, so Brooke decides to go first. The move action is printed on each character card. It costs 1 action card, the difficulty is 0, and the consequence lets us gain 1 skill card. It also says, move your figure onto an adjacent terrain card, as long as you do not exceed your maximum carried weight. As you may recall from the last video, we still have a heatwave card off to one side, which is a global event. That increases the cost of all move actions by 1. So she's forced to draw 2 action cards. I think I'll keep the Jack of all trades card. And move her across the map, of course. I'll also roll a die for the heatwave card. And fortunately that gets discarded. I notice there's a dig action over here beside the tree, and Casper is rearing to make use of his shovel, so he performs the move action on his character card, which gives him a new skill and moves him over to the dig site. Notice that the dig action includes a little chain icon, which, to be frank, is pretty damn important. The technical term for this icon is a chain icon. It comes from the Latin chain, meaning to chain something. The first important point is that the chain icon doesn't affect the number of cards you can draw. In fact, we've already met the icon which increases or decreases the cost of an action, and it doesn't look anything like a chain, even in bad lighting. But after you've drawn your action cards and revealed them, it will be time to count up stars on the cards you just drew, and the chain icon will limit the number of cards you can include. Let's see this in action. Casper the friendly Cossack is ready to start digging, and Brooke chooses not to get involved. Now, I think this is a good moment to confess that up to this point I've been sort of pulling the wool over your eyes. I've been performing actions and flinging cards around like confetti, but there are actually 4 steps you need to go through to perform an action: gear up, draw, result, and consequence. My failure to even mention these steps before now is a clear case of flagrant deception, and I will be offering viewers a full refund on the purchase price of this video. So the first step of the dig action is to gear up, which means deciding which of your purse cards you want to use. In this case, Casek's only possession is his prized shovel, and I think it's a good idea for him to use that, rather than dig with his bare hands. I like to nudge purse cards upwards a little bit to indicate that they've been selected. The important thing is that this is a choice. You don't have to select any cards, but whatever you decide, you can't change your mind later. There's one other important rule which you don't want to forget when you're selecting purse cards. Many purse cards have a list of keywords at the very bottom, and you can only select one card with a given keyword. For example, if Casek had 2 purse cards with the trinket keyword, he would not be able to select both of them. Next is the draw step, where I draw action cards. The minimum is 3, and I think I'll draw 4. That's it for the draw step, so now it's on to the result step. And this is where the chain icon comes into play. When counting up stars and combining half stars, I can only consider 3 of the 4 cards that I drew, because 3 is the default cost, shown on the action. So the chain icon does make things more difficult. The upside is that I get to choose which 3 cards to consider. So I think I'll choose these 3, which give me 3 stars. Now the most important rule to remember about chain icons is this. The chain icon only applies to stars and half stars which appear in the result region of the cards you just drew. It doesn't affect stars which come from skill cards or purse cards or anywhere else. Nor does it have any effect on class icons, text or anything else. For example, you're free to use the class icons on all the cards you drew, assuming you can find a use for them of course. Because we selected the shovel, it has the potential to add a couple of successes by converting class icons, but unbelievably I don't have either of those class icons to spend. I should also check Casek's skill cards. Unlike purse cards, you don't need to select these at the start of the action. You're free to use skill cards if and when you choose to. Unfortunately, in this case, his only skill card is Stay Classy, which does have some class icons, but can't be used on a dig action. So that's only 3 successes altogether, which is well short of the 5 required for success. How Casek managed to fail at digging a hole in the ground when armed with a shovel is beyond me. It's possible that he's not the sharpest tool in the shed and was using the wrong end. In any case, it's on to the 4th and final step, consequences. There's a silver lining here, which is that the failure consequence in the black box actually lets Casek gain a skill card. So failed consequences aren't always bad. Perhaps he learned from his mistakes. I think I'll take the improvise card. I also need to check the shovel card, which says, if selected, then during the consequence step, roll a die. If you roll a 1 or a 2, block this. Blocking a card involves placing it out of reach under your character card until the game lets you unblock it. It's bad enough that the shovel was useless at the very task it was designed for, but now there's also the possibility that he broke it. So I'll roll a d6, and fortunately it didn't break. And that is the end of this rather disappointing dig action. Okay, cut, time out. Let's just pause the game for a moment, because I want to address one of the main problems with this video series. Alright, one of the many major problems with these videos, which is this. The experience of playing the 7th Citadel is almost entirely absent from these videos. In the actual game, there's all this world building and lore, atmosphere and adventuring. There are quests and puzzles to solve, and you'll meet all sorts of interesting characters. There's even a dialogue book packed with encounters and branching choices. But all this video really does is introduce you to a handful of icons, which kind of makes sense. I mean, this is a how to play video, but it does sell the game short. So I hope you don't come away from this thinking that the actual game is as silly as these videos, because it is not. I think one of the best antidotes to this issue is for me to collaborate with the game's developer and attempt to capture at least some of the spirit of the game, and I hope to do more of that in future. And that's it for part 2. I hope you'll join me in the 3rd and final video in the series, where you can learn about recovery, permanent event cards, the Citadel leaflet and much more. See you there!